Welcome to the Fabulous Fifties and Beyond. I'm Jim Pollard, your co-host with my wife Jeanetta. Today we're going to be talking about disaster preparedness. After the ice storm of '09 here in western Kentucky, I think there are things that we need to look at, ways to prepare, things that we didn't do, things that we should have done. So you stay tuned and we'll be right back.
And he'd say, go with what you got. Start from where you are. Give it your best shot. Keep reaching for that star. Get in the race. Keep your own pace. Keep moving and never stop. Just go. Go with what you got.
We're glad that you decided to watch our show today. After the ice storm of '09, I think there are a lot of things that we need to look at in the way of how unprepared we were and ways that we can prepare. Basically, we're going to spend the bulk of this show in looking over a booklet that we have here that we gathered off of the internet called Disaster Plan, Checklists, and Resources. I don't know that I like the word disaster plan as much as I like the term disaster preparedness. And disaster strikes in many different phases, or there are many different types of disasters. And I'm afraid to say that most of the time when disaster occurs, most people are not prepared for it. Now, Jeanette and I lived in South Florida for 23 years. We knew what it was to prepare for a hurricane. They usually had enough time to warn us about this, and there were certain things that we tried to do or that we did to prepare for the onslaught of a hurricane. Fortunately, in the 23 years, we only had one major hurricane. Now, it was a good one. It was Andrew. But we every time they'd talk about a hurricane that it was going to come in to hit us in South Florida, we would do certain things to prepare for it. We're going to talk about some of those things today. Jeanetta likes to share the story of what went on during hurricane at our house and the crowd and everything. You might want to tell them about some of the rules that we're going to have next time.
Yeah, we had several people who came to our home. Some of them because they didn't want to be alone, and of course our daughter because her brother told her she was not going to stay in her condo, that we were all going to be together. And but one thing that I did not tell everybody is to leave your cigarettes at the door, because when you have a hurricane, you have to close up all of your windows. You put plywood or something over them so that things won't come flying through the glass. And we had several smokers with us, and we had no windows open or anything else. And I said, next time I will know. I will tell the people, you put leave your cigarettes at the door, because it really got stuffy and nasty when you're in there for a few hours and you can't go out. Because when you go out, there's a quiet, and sometimes people think the storm is over, but that's not. That just really usually means that the eye of the hurricane is now passing over.
Yeah, and it gets real. I mean, it's kind of a strange situation, because you've had these winds battering you for all this time, and then all of a sudden it becomes very calm and very quiet. But when we think about a family disaster plan and some of the things that we need to do, let's talk about some of the risk. Now, who would have thought that we would have a hurricane in Kentucky? And yet, last fall, we had wind damage from a hurricane in Kentucky. She and I jokingly said that when we left South Florida, we thought we were through with hurricanes. Didn't work out that way. When the hurricane came through here last fall and did a lot of damage. And again, any type of major storm like this, whether it's a hurricane or an ice storm or windstorm, shows how fragile our electrical grid is. And we have become so dependent on electricity, and that's where a lot of people had a lot of problems. Now, we were without electricity for 12 days. We've talked to someone today who was without electricity for 19 days. We've talked to some who were out without electricity for a long period of time. So you need to work about some of the preparation. And she and I have talked about that. We live in the area, and we live on what they call the New Madrid Fault. So there's a possibility of having an earthquake here. Now, nobody knows when these things are going to happen, but there are certain basic things that we need to do to prepare for whatever kind of disaster might hit us. But there's earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes. Since we've been back here 15 years, we've seen several tornadoes that have gone through.
Tornado warnings.
Well, tornado warnings
in our area.
In our area, but we've seen the damage of them, like in Marshall County and other areas, when it tore down trees and destroyed trailers and things like that. We also live in an area where we could experience flooding. And I know that we went to, I guess it was Red Cross meeting we went to that time, and they were talking about different disasters that could happen, and talking about how that we're in a like a floodplain area where we could have flooding and different things like that. Then there's fires or heavy snow. How many years ago was it when that snow hit 24 and paralyzed everybody?
I don't know, it was a few years ago, but we had a really freak snowstorm because we don't usually have much snow, and I think it was about 14 inches. And a lot of people were stuck on I-24. That was, you know, I don't think that we ever think, or I don't usually think about being stuck in your car with no way to go anywhere, and you can't go home and you can't go forward, you're just stuck. And so that's why that we need to have a package in our cars that we have if we need them.
And that's one thing that we'll talk about. One thing that can also, we're going to have how you can find this book on the internet and the different things that the different emergency preparedness agencies have by going to our blog, and they'll show you our blog address on the screen. But if you go to our blog, you can request some more information about some of the materials that are available. There are a lot of good materials that are online, and they're for free. A lot of things that you can get that the different emergency agencies make possible for you. But this thing of being trapped in your car, it got us to thinking, and we have an emergency kit in our car. It's got a blanket in it, it's got some food bars in it, it's got some water in it, it's got a flashlight in it. These are all things, and maybe some gloves, but we'll go through the different things that you need on your checklist. And of course, there are a lot of other things that we could look forward to, you know, explosions or chemical accident. We live in an area with several chemical plants here. It's always been a thought that I have. What if one of those has a problem with it too? But there are other things, and who would have thought prior to 9/11 of us having a terrorist attack? You know, that was one thing that I would have it hazard to guess did not cross many people's minds prior to 9/11 was the threat of a terrorist attack.
But they say that we will have another one again one of these days. It's not a matter of having it, but it's a matter of when.
Right. So these are things that we need to be aware of. And then, of course, there's always infectious diseases, an outbreak of an infectious disease. Over the past few years, you don't hear as much about it now as in the past few years, but there was a lot of talk about the flu pandemic, and there's a lot of talk about that. They still haven't got that totally knocked down in the other parts of the world, but that's another thing that could happen to us too. So go ahead.
The bird flu.
The bird flu, right.
That's what you were talking about.
Yeah, the bird flu pandemic is another thing that...
there was a lot of talk about that for a while.
A lot of talk about that for a while, and it still looms out there that it could happen. So these are different things that could happen, you know, and we buy an insurance policy. I've seen people, you know, you buy car insurance, you buy house insurance, fire insurance, and all these different things. But there are these little emergency kits, and all the emergency associations, the American Red Cross, the Emergency Management Association, Homeland Security, all these different organizations recommend that you have at least a 3-day kit. I was jokingly talking with one of the men here earlier that 3 days didn't quite max out to that 12 or 19 that we had without power, but it was a help. So what they say is that by having a 3-day kit, generally the agencies can begin and start helping within the 3-day period of time. That's not always true either, but they try to get them in. The different government agencies, Homeland Security, FEMA, the different ones try to get in and try to work and try to help us out within the 3-day period of time.
But if it's a widespread thing, we could not have it for a long time, longer than 3 days.
Absolutely, and that's the reason that we need to look at some of these plans and have a plan of action. Now, I'm sure that some of this stuff is brand new to some of you, that you've never thought about it, you never heard it, but all we ask is that you just look at it, think about it, and decide whether you want to be a part of the plan. You know, if you're a part of the plan, then you have more peace of mind about some of the things that are going out there. And I guess one of the first things they need to do is you need to discuss with your family the need to prepare for a disaster. Discuss the different types of disasters that they can have, and then decide how you want to prepare for them. One of the things now, we don't have that much of a problem now because we don't have small kids or kids in school. But one of the important things that you need to do is you need to discuss where you're going to meet after there is a disaster. Now, I've actually heard of people who decided where they were going to meet in the yard, like if there was a fire. And that's something that you need to think about. If there was a fire in your house, you have a 2-story house, and your kids are strode out through different bedrooms in the house, and you are too. If there is a fire in the house, each one of you needs to have an evacuation plan. You know, how you go get out of that second story if there's a fire? What if it's on the stairway? How you going to get out? And then once you're out, you need to say, okay, we're going to meet in this corner of our yard to make sure that everybody's out of the house. I know you hear fires when the firemen will come up and they'll say, somebody's in the house. Well, where are they? Well, they don't know where they're supposed to be. They don't know where they are in the house. So the firemen do not know where to go in and try to get the people out. But if you have a place where everybody's supposed to meet in your yard or your place, then they will know whether everybody is out of the house or not. So you need to decide where you're going to meet up. Now, that's if you're at home. Now, if you're not at home, if mom's at work, dad's at work, kids are at school, and there's a disaster, you need to have a set place to where you're going to meet at that point. Are you going to meet at home? Are you going to meet at another place within town? But you need to have a place to know where you're going to meet if it happens out there. Then also, another thing that you might need to have is a place to meet if you can't return home. What if there is a disaster or a hazardous spill of some kind of chemical and you cannot return home? I remember a couple of years ago, was it, that one of the chemical plants had some kind of a spill, and they actually got the people out of their houses up in Calvert City and wouldn't let them go back in until it was clear. And that's when you need to have a place to say, well, we're going to meet right here so that they know that everybody's out and everybody is safe. So this is another thing that can be done. And then another thing you need to talk about is a third-party contact person. Now, I remember during 9/11, we have a foster son, we call him our foster son, who was stationed at the Pentagon during 9/11. And the plane that went into the Pentagon during 9/11 went into his section of the Pentagon. His desk was wiped out. He was away from the desk at the time. He was 10 minutes away from it. So he was not hurt, but he lost several good friends in 9/11. Now what happened was we started trying to get in touch with him, but you can imagine the mess of the phone lines with that. That afternoon about 1 o'clock, we received an email from him letting us know that he was safe. So you need to have these kind of communication systems lined up so that you'll know what's going on out there. All right, we're going to talk about some of the plans, some of the actual things that you need to have in your kit, your emergency kit, and we're going to be talking about that when we come back now. So you come back and be with us for the second half of our show.
Of the nation to bravely serve in protecting our way of life. It is the privilege of VA to return that service with the excellent health care that our veterans have earned. And it is the nurses of VA, men and women of all backgrounds, who help to make that quality health care possible by providing a vital service to the community, by sharing ideas in a supportive, professional environment, by giving the best of themselves every day, and by advancing to the top of their field. But most of all, by providing excellent and direct care to every one of their patients.
We are the nurses of VA.
VA Nursing, a career in caring. For more information, contact vacareers.com.
We didn't have much to give then. So when they showed up, firing them mean looks around the place and staring us down on prices, well, I was angry. Didn't seem to bother my father, though. He had me load another bushel of apples in their trunk. I learned later on that this family was in need.
The greatest gift we give, it's in our heart, what we believe, the way we live.
Caring for others. Pass it on.
And he'd say, go with what you got. Start from where you are. Give it your best shot. Keep reaching for that star. Get in the race, keep your own pace, keep moving and never stop. Just go, go with what you got.
Welcome back. As you know, we're discussing disaster preparedness today. After the ice storm of '09, we felt like this was a topic that one needs to talk about. And it's not something that you can just forget about and say that it's not going to happen again. We were talking with a friend of ours the other day, and she said that her husband said, well, maybe people will think about being more prepared now, you know, with the generators and everything. And she said, no, I just looked at the paper and a lot of people are selling their generators already, you know, like nothing will ever happen again. And so they're selling them at discounted prices, and yet something happens again. They got to go be out looking for them again.
Well, we've already had 2 disasters within the past year.
Basically, we
had
have.
the hurricane come through, which nobody ever expected, and then this ice storm, and then a few days after that there was heavy winds, which caused some damage. So it's been, it just goes on and on to the things that you can have. And some of the things, like he talked about, that we had learned a lot going through hurricanes. And one thing we learned is that you fill your bathtub full of water so that you can flush your commodes with it. And then also put up some clean water for drinking and also for cooking. But this is very helpful if you have your bathtub filled with water.
Yeah, because it's real handy. You can just put it over and flush your commode with it. And that's an important thing to remember, that you need the water, and not always are the water systems working. And filling up your bathtub with it is great. Another thing that we talk about, and you need to decide, are you going to stay or are you going to go? And sometimes you're not given that option if FEMA comes in and tells you that the threat is so great that you have to leave. But I know that during this ice storm, some of our family members decided they were going to go, and they left and went to another area. And our comment is, if it's all over, there's no place to go. You know, you're stuck where you are. Go ahead.
But you could also be stuck in where you are, not be able to get out.
Right.
Like we couldn't get out of our driveway until we cleared it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the ice storm hit on Monday night. It was Thursday before we actually were able to cut ourselves out. I mean, we could have done it sooner, but there was no need to. But we literally had to take the chainsaw and clear our driveway and to cut a way out to get out to the road. Even though the roads were getting clear, we still had trouble getting out of our driveway. So these are things that you need to think about. Are you staying or going? Another thing that we discovered during a hurricane, and I'm sure that it would be true in a lot of areas too, is you need to have some way to turn off your gas and your water. You need to know where the cutoffs are. You need to know how to use them. Because if you have a gas leak, you need to be able to cut that gas off so that it doesn't create an explosion in your house. And they say if you smell gas or suspect gas at all, you know, number one, you don't turn the lights on, don't try to, because the spark could set it off, and you don't light anything because that could set it off also. So these are just basic things that you need to know about.
And you also need to check on if you know elderly people who are alone, or if you have family members who maybe there's just 1 or 2 of them. You need to check on those people and make sure that they're okay, because there were people that froze to death during this, and a lot of times there are people that freeze to death in homes in different areas.
That's true, and so you need. I jokingly said that some of our neighbors called on us. I said they were checking on the old people as they called and checked on us. But you need to be able to do it. And it was interestingly enough, during the ice storm of '09, our phone never went out. It's the most unique thing, that our phone never went down. And so you
But,
need, go ahead.
But we did have a problem getting out because it would say all circuits are busy. You keep trying, and everybody's on the phone, and so you can't always get out even though your phone is working.
Well, that's one thing it says in the book here, that when you're on the phone, you're on there for a reason. Do your business and get off so that the phones don't stay tied up. And so that's another interesting thing that we need to think about. Have your emergency kit available. I think you need to have one in your car, and you need to have one at home. And if you have to leave your home, take your home emergency kit with you also, because it has more stuff in it than the one in your car does. Let's talk about some of the things that your emergency kit has to have. Before we get into that, we talked about staying or leaving. If you're leaving and you're not able to get in touch with your neighbors or your friends to let them know that you're gone, they say to put a note on your door to let them know that you are gone, so that they won't break into your house and try to find you, different things like this, that they will know that you're gone.
Well,
go ahead.
One thing that they did during the ice storm was they were actually going door to door, especially in the towns, and checking to make sure that the people who were there were okay. And they said, if you're okay, then just put a note on your door that we're fine. But if you need help or something, put out a sign too.
So that's important. All right, let's talk about your emergency kit. Here's some of the things, and we'll just go over these off of this booklet. And like I said, the Red Cross has a booklet that talks about emergency kit. FEMA has one, Homeland Security has one. These are different agencies that have different pamphlets that tell you what you need to have in your kit. This one says, ideally your kit should include, number one, drinking water. And that's a 3-day supply of drinking water. Well, how much is a 3-day supply of drinking water? Well, a 3-day supply of drinking water is 1 gallon per person per day. That's what they call a day's supply of drinking water, is 1 gallon, 1 person a day. And it also says that children or nursing mothers may require more water, so you need to figure that into your plan also, and need to think about that. Also, if you live in a warm weather climate, you may need to consider that more water will be necessary. It says store water tightly in clean plastic containers, such as soft drink bottles, or just buy bottled water. And so these are some of the things that you need to look at for the water. You need to have a gallon of water per person per day.
That was one thing that we had done after Hurricane Ike came through. I started putting water in 2-liter bottles and, just saving them, and we were able to use them. Not necessarily for cooking or anything, but you can use water for washing your hands or whatever.
And another thing, during the ice storm, I know a lot of people threw food away because they let it ruin because they kept it in the house. Well, as cold as it was, you could have taken some of that food out of the refrigerator in the freezer and just put it outside in a bucket.
It would have stayed frozen.
We had stuff that stayed frozen. We had water that was frozen just by sitting it out on the table outside because it was so cold. It was 8 degrees one night, 0 I think one night. So you need to think. You don't need to get in a panic mode, but you need to think some of the things that are going on, and so how that you can do some of these things. And talking about food, it says store at least a 3-day supply of non-perishable foods. It says choose the items with long shelf life. Now, one thing is that you can do you can rotate your food, you can check the shelf life on your food, and you can rotate it. You can use it, you can eat it, and then replace it. But the thing that a lot of people do, and we've been guilty of this also, is you eat it and you don't replace it.
Right.
And so if you take it out of your kit, you need to replace it back. Another thing it says, and this is what we were talking about, select foods that require no refrigeration. It's really important that you realize this. She and I have talked about, we've canned a lot of food, and we have a freezer full of food, and she was saying we need to can more of our food than put it into the freezer, because it lasts indefinitely if you can it.
And it
Go ahead.
a lot of people lost like whole freezer full of food.
Right.
Now, sometimes the insurance will cover that, your homeowners, but I don't know. I'm sure they have a schedule of how they pay for it. But
Right. Another thing it says, include items such as ready-to-eat canned meats, fruits and vegetables, protein or fruit bars, crackers, nuts, dried fruit, multivitamins, chocolate and other comfort foods, and high-energy foods. Now, notice it says chocolate and other comfort foods. Let me tell you, after you've been in this survival mode, I guess is what I would say, or in a camping mode for all of these many days, a chocolate bar tastes pretty good. And not only does it taste pretty good, it kind of helps your spirits. Go ahead.
Well, they have talked about that if you have only like rice or maybe rice and beans to eat, and that's all you eat for days, it gets to the point where you don't even want to eat. I mean, because we Americans are spoiled. Now in other countries, that's all they eat all the time. But we're used to having a variety of foods, and if you don't have something else to throw in there, then it just gets to where you just don't even want to eat,
Right.
which is not a good thing.
Well, you know, this list goes on and on and on. Talks about having a change of clothes, gloves, socks, hat. One of the cameramen here said, you know, a good catalytic heater that you can buy at Walmart just requires some bottle fuel, and it can be used indoors. Anyway, there are a lot of things that are in this book. And this book is called Disaster Plan, Checklist, and Resources. And as we think about this, we want to encourage you to go to our blog if you're interested in having more information about this, where you can find it, and the different pamphlets and things that are available. Go to our blog, and our Fabulous 50s and Beyond blog, and there you can sign up, or you can find different information about survival. There'll be some hot links on there to the different places where you can find this information, and we encourage you to do that. Go ahead.
The important thing is just to do something, and you know, do have some extra food around and some extra water, because you can't live without food and water. A lot of things you can live without that we don't think that we could, but food and water you have to have.
And we want to thank you for watching this today. We think that disaster preparedness is such an important thing today. We never panicked during the ice storm of '09 because we knew what we had. There are a lot of people that panicked. They literally panicked because they had nothing put up. They didn't know what they were going to do. And you need to keep a calm head during situations like this. So we encourage you to prepare in some way. You can go to our blog, to our address, and we'll be glad to put you in touch with some of this information. And we want to thank you for watching our show today. We're about out of time again, but we've enjoyed being with you today, and we want to encourage you to watch our show each week. We'll try to have an interesting and informative and exciting show in place for you. And remember, you need to get out and volunteer. You need to look at what's going on around you and be ready for whatever situation might be thrown at you. But again, we thank you for watching our show today. And remember, use it or lose it.
Can't see as well as I used to, can't run as far or as fast. Sometimes I think that the old me is becoming exactly that. But when I start thinking of all I don't have, that's when I tell poor me Beethoven was 50 and deaf as a post when he wrote his 9th Symphony. And he'd say, go with what you got,